Welcome to episode 174 of the Business Development Podcast. And today we're chatting with the entrepreneur's therapist, Patricia Bathory. It is an absolutely incredible episode, and you are not going to want to miss it. Stick with us.
The great Mark Cuban once said, "Business happens over years and years. Value is measured in the total upside of a business relationship, not by how much you squeezed out in any one deal." And we couldn't agree more. This is the Business Development Podcast, based in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and broadcasting to the world. You'll get expert business development advice, tips and experiences, and you'll hear interviews with business owners, CEOs, and business development reps. You'll get actionable advice on how to grow business. Brought to you by Capital Business Development, capitalbd.ca. Let's do it. Welcome to the Business Development Podcast. And now your expert host, Kelly Kennedy.
Hello, welcome to episode 174 of the Business Development Podcast. And my gosh, do we have an absolute rock star for you today. Today, we are bringing you Patricia Bathory, MBA, MACP, CCC. Patricia is a dynamic entrepreneur and seasoned psychotherapist who has dedicated over a decade to understanding the intricacies of interpersonal dynamics. As the author of Connected, Building Relationships to Achieve Success and Make a Lasting Impact, she expertly bridges the worlds of business and psychology. Patricia's unique blend of experience as the founder and general manager of an import-export business, combined with her practice as a psychotherapist, equips her with unparalleled insights into the personal and professional challenges faced by today's leaders. Educated in Canada, born in Brazil, and with strong ties to the United States, Patricia's diverse background enriches her approach to fostering meaningful relationships and achieving success. Patricia's compelling speaking engagements captivate audiences with topics ranging from intellectual humility to the pursuit of existential purpose. She advocates for the transformative power of relationships, believing that strong connections are the bedrock to lasting success. With advanced training in psychoanalysis and family dynamics, Patricia emphasizes the importance of community and collaboration in both personal and professional realms. As a beacon of wisdom in the fields of entrepreneurship and psychotherapy, Patricia Bathory inspires individuals to harness the power of relationships to create a profound and enduring impact. Patricia, it's an absolute honor to have you on the show today.
Oh, thank you. That was a beautiful intro. I'm like, who is this? But I want to meet that person.
Well, let me just say, after reading your book, it is well earned. And, we chatted about this before the show, but I honestly can't believe that you were able to cram so much information on relationships into one book. And, as a huge advocate of relationships and a connection builder on the Business Development Podcast, great work.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It makes me very happy that you took the time to read it and that you enjoyed it. That's definitely the best news I can possibly get today. Made my day.
Yeah, I what's funny? I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with amazing authors like yourself because honestly, I hate interviewing amazing authors without reading their books. So I do try to read at least one of their books ahead of every interview. But my gosh, I think I've probably read more in the last year than I've read in a really long time.
That's a good side effect of your work then. That's, you cannot complain about that.
It kind of is. Yeah, I'm getting crammed with lots of great insights for sure.
But, that's somebody asked me, was like, oh, how was it to write the book? I'm like, you know what, as tough as it was, one of the side effects, one of the things that I had to do was read a lot. So I think while I was writing that book, I read 20 books as well. I'm like, this is not a bad thing to do. Write a book, that means you have to read and research. So it's not a bad thing to have to do.
Yeah. And, we talked about this before, but it's your very first book and it is incredibly well written, well done. And I want to spend some time on that because I know we have lots of entrepreneurs listening who aspire to write books and are maybe like you, have an amazing business background, but, just never really took the step or never knew how to start. So I think maybe some insights on that would be really cool. But before we get into that today, who is Patricia Bathory? How did you end up on this journey? You are originally from Brazil.
Yes, I am. I was born in Brazil. I actually come from a multicultural family. My dad's Brazilian, my mom's Slovak. How did they meet? That's a whole podcast in itself. So the two of them met in Brazil. We were born in Brazil. It's me and my brother and my sister. I lived there until I was 14 and then moved to Edmonton. Now, why did you move to Edmonton? Well, my mom, who's Slovak, has a sister who immigrated to Edmonton. So that's how we ended up in Edmonton. Lived there, went to high school, went to Ainley. So I'm from your hometown. I'm excited to be talking to you, actually. So I went to Ainley. I went to the U of A, got a Bachelor of Science from the U of A and my MBA from the U of A. And ended up marrying a Brazilian right? Like the world kind of goes around. Met a Brazilian, very nice guy, smooth. And I'm like, oh, okay. fell for him really hard. So that was 30 years ago. That's when we started dating. And then moved back to Brazil, married him, had 2 kids. Then we, being the Canadian lover that I am, I love this country. I love everything about Canada. I wanted my kids to have the sprinkle of Canada on them, the culture, the values, the people. So pestered my husband until he agreed to move to Canada. So we've been back here for the last 7 years. Now we're in Calgary, though I still cheer for the Oilers. So, I have not, we're in the playoffs, so it's all good. Won yesterday. That's all a great thing.
Oh man. I was on the edge of my seat all night.
What is that? I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to have a heart attack here. It's like, I wonder how the ER is. But anyway, so been here back for the last 7 years and loving every minute of it. Maybe not the winters so much, but.
Yeah. Oh man, I was going to say, I think there's probably a lot of Canadians who aspire to leave to Brazil.
I know. And people ask me, they're like, so what made you move to Canada? And, I straight faced, I'm like, oh, the weather. And it's funny because people take a step back and they're like, does she know, right? Like, do we tell her? I'm like, no, I'm joking. I'm like, no, people. And then when I tell people why I moved here, my love for Canada, my love for this country, for how progressive we are, for how our values and the fact that we're so multicultural, so accepting of different cultures. And when I tell people this, I think I am one of those people who inspire Canadians to love their country because I love it so much. So it's, I love to be here.
And, we talked about this briefly before the show, but I think it's such a perspective that I've had from multiple guests on this show of how amazing Canada is as a country. And it's like, I take it for granted, right? I was born in Edmonton. I grew up just outside of the city. We now live back in the city. Like, I have not ventured far from home, right? And it's like, okay, we got these beautiful mountains, 3 hours west. We got, like I said, Calgary, a very beautiful city, just not too far, south as well. But it's like, I don't know. We just take it for granted. Totally. Right. What is it about Canada compared to Brazil that really opened your eyes to this place?
I think we end up falling, once we live here, we end up falling into that rut of complaining about the cold. So it's really cold. It's really cold. It's really cold. It's like, yes, I agree. It is really cold. Speaks the lady that in December, I'm like, out of here. I'm like, kids, fend for yourselves. I'm out of here. And I do. I leave the country for a month or two, December, January. I just find it difficult to be here. But aside from that, Canada is a country of opportunities. It accepts everyone. It accepts the different points of view. I find that we have evolved more than most when it comes to understanding that people have different points of view, trying to listen to even our polarization is different from the polarization we see in the US and in other countries, for instance.
Sure.
I think we have, when I went to school, one of the things I learned, I remember, was you have to have your argument, but you also have to have the counter argument. And I remember that being fundamental in my growing up. And one of these Canadian values that I find is it's okay to have your argument, but you need to be able to see what the other side sees. I was part of debate for a while, and you didn't know until the debate minute which side you're going to debate. So you needed to prepare both sides. And I find that is so rich. And, I'm speaking about this experience in school, but I find that as a community, that's how we are. And maybe because of the influence of so much immigration, and we are an immigrant society. I mean, a lot of times, like, we'll sit around and I'll have one Canadian friend who's like maybe two generations Canadian, and then the third's
Yeah.
already gone. And they sit
Yeah.
there and I'm like, they're a minority. And it's like, what about minorities? I'm like, no, you're a minority. Like, a Canadian born and raised, that you are a
Yeah.
minority, Kelly, not me, right? Like, so
Yeah. Yeah. And we talked a little bit about essentially the polarization and differentiation. And I would say a good prime minister or a good leader, the goal should always be to unite the country. Always, right? And I think with Canada or United States or any of these really large countries, that becomes incredibly hard because they're going over, 4,000, 5,000 kilometers or longer across the entire country. It's very hard to unite people, for instance, on the East Coast and the West Coast because they live completely different lives. They grow up completely differently. It's got to be really hard. And I think one of the things that we really struggle with in entrepreneurship sometimes, or just as people, is how can we create connection with people that we maybe don't share the same understanding or values in? And then it creates like a them versus us, even though that's not really true.
yeah, the most dangerous four-letter word, them. Because the minute it's them, it's unreachable. You can't get to them. It's just too far away. They're different. We don't. It's them. And I agree. That's one of the biggest challenges for leaders in companies. Of course, prime minister is just the leader of a bigger country, of a
Of
bigger
course.
company.
Yes.
And I think, when I was looking at one of these stats, there's always going to be a part of people who will always be that polarized, and they will disagree no matter what. Right. So for those, it's not those people you speak to. Some people will always agree with you, and then those people you don't need to speak to again because they're just your fans. It's the
Yes.
middle people that you need to cater to, the moderate, the ones that you need to convince, the ones that you need to explain what your ideas are about. And, even if you disagree, this is my rationale. Because if you make decisions, I'm going to talk as a leader here for your business. If you're making decisions for the company to move forward, even if you don't agree, even if everybody doesn't agree, there needs to be a rationale why you're taking that decision. So explaining, making sure people understand what is the method behind the madness of your decisions. I find
Yeah.
that is very helpful. And of course, as an employee, to understand that understanding doesn't mean agreeing, but understanding should open space for you to at least then become, okay, I'm on board because I understand why we're doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, and I think the problem with business is that we live in a time where polarization, whether it be, social issues, government issues, belief systems, whatever you want to put it, is starting to really interfere or cause businesses to have to make choices that, in my opinion, they shouldn't have to make, right? Like, in my mind, most businesses are there to cater to other people, right? Who are you to cater to one person over another person? At the end of the day, isn't your business designed to provide value to the world? I think we need to get back to that. I think we need to get away from this polarization in business, whether that be a cultural issue, whether that be, how you feel about your government,
Right.
right? Like, at the end of the day, business should be neutral. And, I try to advocate for that as much as possible.
I hear what you're saying, but I don't know how successful we're going to be in that, because
Yeah, it's very hard.
one thing that we see is, well, Generation Z coming in, and they are engaged as much as they are aligned with the values and the principles of the company. So what we find is that this new generation coming in, unless they are connected to your values, to leadership, to the purpose, unless there's a
Mhm.
purpose that they're working towards and they're aligned in that, that's the only way they're going to engage.
Okay, okay. I agree with you though. I think all companies should have purpose. I guess my challenge with that is that does the purpose really have to align with a political system or with a social charge of the moment? Be-
I agree with, like, so two things. One is what I agree or disagree with, and the
sure.
other is what's the trend, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I agree with is business is business. You want to buy a pen, you buy a pen from me or from you. It doesn't matter. It's a pen. And what you're saying is it should, that's how it should be. You need a pen, you go buy the best pen there is.
Sure.
So I agree with that in a fundamental level. The thing is, we are the dinosaurs now, right? Like we're
Mm,
middle aged, like I, right? Like
sure.
we're not the ones who are really buying. Well, we still are because still the purchasing power is in our hands. But really, the generation coming in, they're like, okay, you're buying a pen. Oh, hang on, but you are not. You don't have diversity a good diversity plan in your company. Oh, you only will hire the whole white male cis whatever, like that's all you hire. Then I'm not going to buy a pen from you, I'm going to buy a pen from someone else. Is that right or wrong? I don't know, but is that a trend? Absolutely, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
if you think about that, that is actually what has pushed people to get better, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're not better, like we had I don't know. Well, you didn't read this because this is a very big Brazilian news. Somebody's dog got shipped by mistake. So they were in Sao Paulo. They were going to go west. By mistake, the dog gets shipped northwest. So for 3.5 hours, he's in the airport for a while and it's super hot, right? Hot and humid. Somebody gave him some water, but it was some water, not enough water. And then the dog gets shipped again. So it was a 9 hour trip as opposed to 2.5 hour trip. The dog dies. Of course, it's a huge thing about the airlines and, and
Mm-hmm.
this whole making a big deal, that's what makes them become better, right?
Sure.
So,
Sure.
again, I agree with you. We should just sell pens and we should not need to position ourselves for everything that we do or sell, and especially our services. But ultimately, people buy into the idea, not just the product. And that is the trend. And so for us, I think it's a matter of, okay, let's understand this trend. And even if not agreeing, understanding it so that then we
Yeah.
can position ourselves as good leaders to move
Okay.
forward.
Amazing. So I want to spend some time on this just because I know there's lots of businesses that are like, what do we do? Right? Like, how do we play this game that we frankly don't even understand?
Mhm.
Like, like you said, we're middle-aged people. For the most part, we're focused on moving the needle. We got families, we got other things that we're
Yeah.
thinking about. To try to think about the whole paradigm of everything else that's kind of influencing the day-to-day business can be very challenging. What is your recommendation for businesses to do when it comes down to social issues or any type of alignments?
So I think again, if we want to be, so I'm going to think as an entrepreneur right now, as a successful business, what do I need to do? I need to hire talent, retain talent. So that's the
Yeah.
number one issue people have today is retaining talent, because people like you and I, we will work for the money and we will work for the title. Simple as that. That's Gen X, that's millennials still will do some of that. Now, Gen Y is like, I don't even care for the money that much. Like, I will make 25% less. That's a big pay cut. I don't know if I'd be willing to take a quarter pay cut. Right. So they will take a pay cut because they want to work 4-day weeks. They
Mm,
want they want to be proud of the company they work for. They
yeah.
want they want the company they work for to be engaged with more important world problems, or um, to be politicized, like that, to be not, what do you call it, to have a stance on things, which what you're saying is like we shouldn't, shoulda, woulda, coulda, but really this is what we're seeing. Now, you as a business owner, you might not agree with that, but this is what the reality is. So if
Yeah.
you as a business owner, if you want to hire talent and retain talent, they will only come if you provide to them a clear purpose, if you provide to them that we are aligned with these higher values, that we do respect people as equals, right? That you have autonomy, that we will be meritocratic. So I think that's what it is. It's about, do you want to succeed or do you want to be right? Do you want to be right or do you want to
Mm.
be successful and happy? Right?
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
right is, well, in my point of view, we shouldn't worry about all these things. It should be about selling pens. Your
Yeah.
opinion is yours. You can be right because it is your opinion. You're entitled to it. But fact is, do you want to be happy and successful? Because if you do, you will need to adapt.
Well, I think it's funny because it doesn't really matter on what side you fall on. At the end of the day, you're alienating customers. How is that good business? That's where I struggle with it, right? I struggle with it from the standpoint of I want to do good in this world and I
Mhm.
don't really care who I do good for. At the end of the day, like you said, we're all human, we're all equals, we all deserve the same benefits of life and business. And so I do struggle with it from that standpoint of I don't want to alienate anybody because I think everybody deserves opportunity.
Mhm.
And it doesn't matter if you pick a side, you are alienating someone and you got
Absolutely.
to take your pick,
But
right?
what sides are we picking here?
I guess what I'm kind of suggesting here is that if you were to pick like any side, if you're going to support maybe left leaning companies or you're going to support right leaning companies, it doesn't really matter what side you're on. If you're going to be public about that as a company and say, this is what we support, are you not alienating at
Absolutely.
least part of your customer
You know
base?
what? I absolutely agree. And I don't think you should position yourself as left
No, I
leaning.
don't think so.
Absolutely not. I think the positioning has to do with values and morals. So
Sure.
my company does not tolerate discrimination. So if you're
Sure.
left or right, if you come in, if you discriminate against whatever it is that you see in my company, that's a no. So it's not about left or right, but it's about elevated um elevated equal thinking, this Canadian value that I speak about so much. It's about
Yeah.
having these values or being a very small mind where you're discriminating, where you're, the bullying at work, the toxicity, that kind of stuff. So it doesn't mean who's doing it. So
Yeah.
it's not left and right for sure. Like I don't think publicly positioning yourself as a business is necessary or good, right? It doesn't matter
Yeah.
who I'm voting for. I remember I used to teach this parenting after separation classes for Alberta. So if you get a divorce in Alberta, you before COVID, it was mandatory that you go to these classes. Now remember, I'm talking about the importance of children, how to put children first, and how conflict second. Don't hate your co-parent more than you love your child, kind of thing. And I remember there was one guy's like, "Who do you vote for? Who do you vote for?" I'm like, "That is absolutely relevant." He goes, "No, it is relevant because depending who you vote for, that's how much I'm listening to you or not." So I'm sitting here going,
Wow.
"That's not the point. I'm telling you to love your child more than you love conflict." So that is the position I think we need to have. What is right
I
and
agree.
what is wrong, not if I'm voting this or that. It doesn't matter.
I know. It's crazy. It's crazy, even in Canada, the level of polarization that has happened, I would say in the last 10 years. And I don't know whether that's just like the advent or of social media and the
Yeah.
way that social media has really showed up in our world, right? So we're seeing it all the time, but it's wild. And I think we've really lost the art to agree to disagree.
Yeah. But you know what it is when you talk about social media, Kelly? This is the one gripe about social media that I have. Social media, I'm talking pretty much everything. If you look in your feed, the world is like you, right? Like, even if you are a completely off the wall outlier, your social feed is going to make you feel like your position is right, like everybody agrees with you.
Mm,
Because what does AI do? If you spend a lot of time looking at Connected, my book, guess what's going to happen? It's going to be showing in your social feed stuff about Patricia and all this. So all of a sudden it's like, oh man, Patricia might be trending. Patricia's like the most popular lady in the world. And it's like, no, I'm not. It's just because you like me, I end up showing up in your feed all the time.
mm,
But if you don't like me, I'm not popping anywhere. If you don't agree with any of the stuff I'm saying, I'm never going to show up. So even
wow.
music, if you like this
Yeah.
certain music, it only shows you that. Social media only shows you the stuff you agree with. So you end up having a view of the world that is very limited. And I think that's what the
Mm,
danger is when we end up thinking that the world is limited to what we believe, to what we think, and to what we value. Because we don't get
yeah.
access to the other side because the algorithm doesn't give it to us. And then we become dumber and unaware. And then when you go out in the street and somebody says, "No, I think that," as opposed to this, then you're shocked and you're horrified and you're like, "You must be wrong." It's like, no, it's actually half of the other world thinks that. So let's go get educated.
Yeah, yeah. So it's actually an education problem at the end of the day.
Ignorance. That's at the root of polarization. Ignorance is the root of discrimination. Ignorance, right? If you
Mhm.
don't want to be polarized, I'll tell you this. Let's say you vote liberal or you vote conservative and you're not even like in the middle, you're like more towards the right or the left. Start reading about the other side because ultimately they're not all wrong, right? Like there is something to be said about the values of the left, right? About this, where everybody's equal, we should all accept, and it's great. And there is something to be said about the fiscal responsibility of the right. So it, really, where do you vote? I'm like, a little bit of each, like give me some of each,
Yeah.
because that's what it is for business people. Why do business people tend to be more conservative? Because fiscal responsibility is a big value,
Yes.
right? So it is simple as that. You can tell how somebody votes by really asking what they do,
Yeah.
right? You're a business person? Okay, let me guess. Let me guess who you
Yeah.
voted for.
Well, and especially in Canada, right?
Right?
Especially in Canada.
Like,
It is really hard. It is really, really hard because I agree with you completely. I think 99.999% of people fit in the middle. But the system, and it doesn't matter whether you're in US or Canada, the system is somewhat designed that the only parties that are gonna win are hard one way or hard the other. The moderate parties, they don't typically have a chance. And it's really sad because it's like, I think most of the time, those are the parties that would win given the
yeah.
chance.
But again, let's go back to social media and the news. What makes the news? A moderate approach, like this conversation, Kelly, is not going to make it to headlines. You know what
Yeah.
would? If I started calling you this and that and throwing tomatoes at you and just being
Yeah.
outraged and say some crazy, off the wall things to the left or to the right, that'll make headlines. And that is
Yeah.
going to pop everywhere. And then for extreme answer or extreme accusations or provocations, there are extreme answers. And then all of a sudden, here we go. That's what we see. Right. And
Yeah.
like you said, most people would like to be more moderate. I think
Yeah.
human beings are good,
Yeah.
right? We're
I agree.
moderate people. If you get a one-on-one, you rarely get people attacking each other. Of course, there's a percentage of people that do, but that's a psychological problem.
Sure.
Most reasonable people, and there's something I really love, which is I heard once. It's reasonable people disagree about a reasonable amount of things, a reasonable amount of times. So knowing that uh, for a fact, then all you have to do is go into these conversations with an open mind to try to understand what is it that they're saying, so that you can come out of these conversations, if anything, instructed, not
Yeah.
threatened.
Yeah. And it's like so much of that is based on values that you've grown up with or have been ingrained in you, or maybe you didn't even choose. And I think that that's really interesting because depending on where you grow up, you get values from your community. And I think one of the challenges that we have is when something goes against those values, we just automatically shut down to listening to the other side and really having that open. Like, I think it takes a lot of work, a hell of a lot more work to have an open mind and allow a value that doesn't necessarily match with who you are inside to sit and spend some time to even lead to something else. I don't know. How do you do that? Like, how do you do that on a regular basis? Because that's kind of, that was a big part of your book, was talking about how do you disagree in a healthy
Right.
way.
Yeah.
But I think some of the challenge that we're facing is when we are feeling that I don't agree with that, there's an anxious feeling inside of us that shuts us down to being open to that other conversation. How do we change that?
I went to get a sticky because this is on my wall. Okay. This is from Alan Wellis, and he talks about how much easier it is to have fixed opinions about things. He says, what we can't alter, we don't have to worry about. So the enlargement of necessity is a measure of economy in psychic housekeeping. So if you already have your opinions, this is bad, this is good, it's so economical. You don't have to think, right? I go in,
Mhm.
pink is good, blue is bad. It's simple as that. I come out, I don't have to question. It's a hard reality. It's difficult if somebody comes in and challenges that, and you have to think about that. And this is the one thing I love most about the therapeutic process. When I get my clients coming in and they're ready, whether because something happened or because they just have that need to enlarge what they see, and they need to start questioning these truths.
Yeah.
And I think the truly enlightened person, the more elevated business person or human being, is the one that has less amounts of truth. right? Oh, I have my values, I have my truths. I'm like, yes, but it doesn't mean you can't challenge them, because
Mm-hmm.
when you know better, you can do better. So
Yes.
why not constantly challenge, right? Like, things we're ignorant about, we tend to dislike or push away. But let's get educated on these things. What's your position? Some things I don't have a position on. How do you position yourself with the whole Middle East problem? I am ignorant. I am very sorry. I cannot position myself. Of course, there's the feeling that you want. I'm like, I want to say this or I want to say that. I will not, because if you don't know, how can you position yourself? So unless you're going to
Sure.
seriously get into something and get that knowledge, and sometimes you will get that knowledge and you still are not able to position yourselves, because there's
Yeah.
something to be said. Again, I'm not going to polarize, because to both sides there is something. So it
Yeah.
is that ability.
Yeah, and I agree. Like, no matter what the conflict, no matter what the challenge, both sides probably are right in one way or another and wrong in one way or another,
Depends on the
right?
point of view, right? What is it?
It's
Every
completely.
every point of view is a view from a point.
That's
Every
right.
point of
That's
view is a
right.
view from a point. So I mean, imagine, let's talk about our playoffs again. Can you imagine the hockey ref choosing not to use all the different perspectives from the cameras and just calling
Sure.
the goals from his point of view? From here,
Yeah.
the puck went
Yeah.
in. Well,
Yeah.
guess what? From there, if you're actually there from that camera, the puck did
Yeah.
not go in. It
That's
looked
right.
like it did, but it didn't. So getting what other people see, that's
Hmm.
the way to get a better perspective on everything, and just makes
Mm.
you wiser. It makes you richer in your opinions. It just makes you more educated, really.
Yeah. It feels, and I know that there's a lot of people who would say it feels really hard to get that external perspective and receive it.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I'm gonna say I've struggled with perspective because I believe that I was right on something because I was born that way, or I was told that that is the way it is and the way that it should be from my parents or from trusted people. And then later in life had to reflect on that. And I remember that being a really hard thing. And I did change a lot of my opinions.
Yeah.
After thinking about them, after meeting people, after having, like you said, discussion and essentially meeting people with a different opinion or a different way of life, that I was like, you know what, there's nothing wrong with that. But at the time, I believed it was
Yeah.
wrong until I had a chance to experience it. So I think so much of it, like you said, is just ignorance. We just don't know. And if you spend more time getting to know a different perspective, I think you'll find that you do align more with it than you'd think.
Kelly, you said something, honestly, like, you said something so powerful there, which is, I've changed my mind,
Yeah.
right? You were able to say that what I thought then is not what I think now. And I think that's the number one fear of people, is to say, maybe I was wrong. You know what? Maybe when I thought that this issue meant that, or when I thought this was a core value of mine, I changed. I see that there
Yeah.
are more important things. I see that there is a better way of doing things. The problem is, let's think of the let's profile leaders here, right? Leaders are always right. Leaders tend to be type A's. They are assertive. They are used to being right. They're leading. So for them to then be able to be in that position where, oh, I don't know. Oh, hang on, Kelly. So what you're saying then is that what I'm saying is not right. And you know what? I think you are right. And I was saying something that wasn't really jiving. So the
Hmm.
ability, and I think that's a primordial quality, is to be able to say, you know what? I changed my mind. I've
Yeah.
changed my mind because now I see things differently. And
Yeah.
people a lot of times feel threatened by it. And that's why they dig their heels and they sustain a position, even sometimes when they're not even 100% with it. So it's about the winning. It's not
Yeah.
about the position anymore. So what are you
Yeah.
fighting about? In divorce, we see a lot
Hmm.
of this. Like, what are you fighting about now? Right? Now
Yeah.
you're fighting about being right,
I
because really, I know
like
you can see the other, like, I know you see how stupid this looks, but
Oh
you're
boy,
not gonna say you're wrong.
I'm looking back at a younger Kelly who liked being right. And
Yeah.
I remember arguing for something that I knew was total bullshit, that was
Oh,
wrong, that I just wanted to win. And that, thank God that Kelly is reconciled a long time ago. But I totally get that. I've been there. I've argued for something that I knew I was wrong at.
but Kelly, just the fact that you say this in your podcast, like, that's big. That's humble, right? To say the younger Kelly, and I'll tell you this, like the younger Patricia, i.e. yesterday, thought about something because we slip. It's not like I'm elevated now. I just know where I need to get better at. But I still
Yeah.
sometimes fight to be right. And I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing? And then you get that check and then you change. It's okay. It's okay to be humble about our struggle to not need to be right because
Yeah.
it's a personality trait. If
Yeah.
that on the one hand, you need that confidence to succeed in business, right? So being
Yes.
right and believing you're right. If you don't have that, you're never going to be a good business owner, right? Do you agree with that? It's like,
Yeah. Or being confident to take the next step and make a choice.
and believe that you're right. Because if you're
Yeah.
not sure, well, I don't know if I'm
Oh,
going to
sure.
like, right? Like, so
Yeah.
I think leaders in general, business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, I'm going to make a big statement. I think those people in general are confident and they believe they're right. Great. On the one hand, that is a great trait to have because it allows you to move forward. It allows you to
Mhm.
be self-propelling because you believe you have the answers, you get going, you get moving. That's the one thing that is very good about that trait.
Yeah.
However, there's the bad side of that trait, which is you tend to think you're always right. And that is the
Mm-hmm.
part we need to have in check, which is, am I always right? Or should I question if I'm right? Also for your business, because a lot of people fail in business because they always think they're right.
Yeah. One of the things that I wasn't always good at that I'm definitely getting better at now is asking for help. Thank God through the show, I've met so many amazing people who are willing to help me, which is amazing. And that's definitely changed my
Yeah,
perspective on asking for help. But I think that as business owners, there's plenty we don't know. Like I've only ran my business for 4 years. So like I'm still a young entrepreneur in the grand scheme of things. And I have a lot that I don't know. And I'm not afraid to say it, but I'm also not afraid to call somebody and say, hey, this is what's going on. I'm not really sure what the right choice is here. Can you help me?
yeah,
And you would be surprised, like if you're willing and brave enough to ask for help, how many people will help you. And I will say right now, if you're brave enough to reach out to me and you have a business development question and you need some help, I would be more than happy to help you. Because I think that as entrepreneurs, I think there's a lot of businesses failing unnecessarily just because people are afraid to call and ask for help.
absolutely. And there's a lot of communities for that too. Like you have EO, right? The Entrepreneurs Organization. You have YPO, and they're the whole premise of these communities is peer help. So there's, and what I like about this is there is a movement now to normalize the need for others. There is a movement to normalize the need for mental health. There is a movement to normalize the I'm suffering. Like I'm
Hmm.
succeeding, yet I'm suffering, I'm struggling, whether in my marriage, whether with my children, whether with my friends, with loneliness. Because on the outside, it looks like I have it all. And then really, there's all these issues and now it's normalized to come for help. The amount of leaders and successful business people and doctors and like just people that on the outside you would never think. It's like, all right,
Yeah.
now they're all like, this is the human me, this is the humble me, and you've done that just now when you're like, the younger me would have said this, like the younger me. So just being okay with being wrong or being fallible or having issues and questions and doubts. I think that is what's going to allow us to really now be successful and happy. Because before it was either or. Either you're really
Mm,
successful but miserable when you die by yourself, lonely, having all these issues. Now it's like I think I see a lot more balanced people where you
yeah.
have that fulfilling personal life and also a very successful entrepreneurial life.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I'm a millennial. I'm on the younger
See,
side of
I'm
that
calling you
millennial
middle
edge, but
aged. I think I'm gonna have to apologize. I'm like, yeah, I got
I'm
a youngin.
35.
Yeah, I'm like, sorry. I just put everybody. I'm like, now that
That's
I'm middle
okay.
aged, I'm like, I'm putting everybody in
No,
the middle age.
I would argue I feel middle aged. So there you go.
I'm a youngin. I'm like, okay, we're gonna scratch all of that in from the
I don't
podcast.
fit in well with 19 or 20-year-olds
It's
anymore.
because
So I
you're
think that makes me middle.
wise. You know what, Kelly? You're wise. It was your wisdom that got me thinking that you're middle aged like me. And it's the old lady and the young interviewer. Oh my
But
goodness.
I was going to say, though, even despite that, I grew up with toughness being important,
Yeah.
being very important. Don't cry, be tough. Don't ask for help. Figure it out on your own. Work hard, keep your head down, keep your nose clean, do a great job at everything. And I feel like as 35-year-old Kelly now, I'm having to rework on that because I spent a lot of my life not being vulnerable, not being open to help, not asking for things that I needed, suffering in silence because that was the way you were supposed to do it. And so, I've definitely grown a lot over the last, 5 years. 30 to 35 for me has been a massive,
Yeah.
massive
Yeah.
change
A
in
after
more
30.
ways than I can
Yeah.
imagine.
Oh, after 30, that's when you really start adulting. So it's 2 things to what you said there. One is, the evolution from 30 to 35. We see that a lot, and having grown with, you have to be strong, you have to be tough, you have to be this. This is where you start questioning, are these things still true? Are these things still valuable? Do these things still make sense? So
Yeah.
after 30, because until 30, you're not really questioning. You're like, you're going to university, getting your degree, you're starting your business, you're doing your thing, you're getting married, maybe having kids, you're doing like, you're kind of not questioning because you
Yeah.
don't have time for that. After 30, that's when you start questioning, are these my values? Or these not? Because after 30, they start being your values. They start being your thoughts as opposed to things that were passed on to you. That's number
Yeah.
one. Now, number
Mm.
two, and this is something I work with all my leaders 100%, is we do a math here, which is when you're not vulnerable, you spend some of your energy to pretend you're okay. There's some energy expenditure in polishing this outside, this strength that is fake.
Mm.
And that amount of energy is wasted because it could have been put to use to way better things like putting your business forward or having better relationships. So the energy that we waste pretending we're okay, pretending we're strong, it really is a stupid waste of energy.
Yeah.
Now, being vulnerable, it's weak. It's well, I don't know if it's weak. Really, it's the most effective way to spend your energy because you're not wasting it. You can be who you are with your fears, with your vulnerabilities, with your um, whatever's not going well, and then you can take all that energy and invest it in getting better and moving forward.
Yeah, yeah. And like we talked about this a little bit before the show, but like entrepreneurship too can feel very isolating, very lonely, right? Like, you hear it a lot. The view from the top can be quite
Very,
lonely.
very
And
lonely.
it really can. And it's so funny, one of my really close friends, super successful, runs, a $20 million business. And yeah, I called him yesterday and I was just like, dude, I'm having an absolute shit day. Like, I was just not having a good day. I was like, I need to talk to somebody. There's not a lot of people I can talk to. So I just want to talk to you. Here's what's going on for me. He's like, Kelly, thank God you called. Here's what's happening to me. And he's like, thank God we have this because I can't talk to my partners about this. I can't talk to my wife about this. These are just things that I live with unless I have somebody to talk to. And it's like, it's so funny. Like, I'm sure every entrepreneur is struggling with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the challenges of the entrepreneur is different than the challenge of the employee, right? Because the entrepreneur, they have to worry about their own. There's that responsibility of this is my business. A lot of times your own money is running that business. So it's really personal. It's not just the salary. It's like all of my money is in this,
Yeah.
especially if it's cash intensive. But not only that, there's that sense of responsibility for the families that you employ. So if the business goes bankrupt, it's my family plus all these other families that I employ. So
Hmm.
there's this extra added weight, and then of course the oh my god, what if I fail? What are people going to think of me? What am I
Yeah.
going to think of myself? A little bit of that identity that enmeshes with the business. If the business fails, does it mean I'm a failure?
Hmm.
Right. So that's a big question.
And it's so funny because I've talked to multiple founders on this show who have lost one or two businesses that way, ended up coming back and becoming immensely successful, which blows my mind because I think of a loss like that and I just think PTSD stuff. Like, how do you ever recover? Because, like you said, it's not just a loss of your organization, it's a piece of who you are. You do not start a company and pour your heart and soul into it and not want with everything you have for it to succeed.
Yeah. And for your own company, you'll do Saturdays, Sundays, all the different times. So really, like you said, it's your DNA. It has blood, sweat, and tears. It's so enmeshed with your really it's character defining. It becomes who you
Yes.
are. And then at what point the company starts, at what point the person starts, and this middle part that is kind of enmeshed. How do you make that differentiation? And that is particularly difficult when it
Yeah.
fails, because is it the company? Does it mean I'm a nothing? Especially if it goes bankrupt or if it loses all sales. Um, I'll do the pitch for the chapter 2 in my book, which talks about this entrepreneur Canadian he's my brother. So we grew up in Edmonton,
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
a company here called Patron Scan, which is ID. It's an ID scanning business. During COVID, lost 85% of his business because
Wow.
it's all hospitality. Hotels
Mhm.
were closed, bars were closed, restaurants are closed. Can you imagine? Like, what do you think happens when you lose 85% of your sales overnight?
Yeah, you're screwed
Right.
most of the
So then
time.
he's like, okay,
Yeah.
it's going to be a couple weeks, going to be 3 weeks. And then, a
Mhm.
month in, like people are returning all this because it's all it's service based. And then all of a sudden it's like, what am I? This is going to go bankrupt. How long is this going to be? We can't, there's all these families. I got to still pay salary, yet we have no money coming in. It does something to somebody's mind, right? Like,
Yeah.
how do you pivot from that?
Yeah.
And then if you're not strong in the sense of, if you cannot separate yourself from the business, you are unable to come back. So that's why it's so important to have that clarity of, where do you end and where does a business begin, and where does a business failure just means business failure. Don't
Yeah.
read into it as in it must mean then that I suck, I'm a bad business person. It means nothing. It just means the business failed.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's really hard for a lot of people to separate because, I find that like as an entrepreneur and as I'm trying to build both this podcast, my company, my coaching, everything that we're doing, um, yeah, you put almost everything into it, and I know that I can struggle with finding enjoyment outside of my work now because I think I focus so much on, what we're doing next. It's so exciting. I love my work. And I can definitely struggle, like, for instance, to do things that I used to find enjoyable. I struggle to do them now because there are times, especially with what we're doing, where it's like, that's a waste of time. I need to be focusing on what's going to move the needle for my organization. Right or wrong, I have talked to so many entrepreneurs who struggle with the same thing.
Yeah. I love it how you said right or wrong. Please elaborate on that as a therapist. I'm like, what do you
Sure.
mean wrong?
Yeah.
What part of you thinks that could be wrong?
I think a part feels wrong because I want to enjoy my life today more, but I also recognize that there's a sacrifice. There's always a sacrifice. Doesn't matter what it is you want to do. You have to sacrifice something to succeed somewhere else, usually.
Mhm.
And so it feels like, and I've talked to enough entrepreneurs to know that, and it sucks. Like, this statistic kind of sucks. Most of the ones that I've talked to that are really successful have lost a great deal to achieve that success. And even if they have balance in their life today, it took 5 to 10 years of incredibly hard work to get to balance. And so I think for me, I look at it as it's a necessary evil, even if it's not necessarily the goal that you would wish to have today.
You have to be clear about what price you're willing to pay, I think.
Mm,
Because yes, sacrifice is the price. But then you got to figure out, what are you sacrificing? And if that
mm,
price is worth paying. So
yeah,
I will sacrifice free time. I will sacrifice, so to write the book, that big of an endeavor, I
yeah,
needed to sacrifice my leisure reading because I only read things that pertained to that topic. I had
yes,
to sacrifice, I love to work out. I have a pretty good workout regimen. I did sacrifice some of that. Like, I wasn't as
mm,
steady as I wanted to be.
yeah,
However, there are other prices I was not willing to pay. The book came out a year after I wanted it to come out. A year. Like, that's a lot of time.
wow, yeah, it
And
is,
the
yeah,
reason for that is because I was not going to sacrifice trips with my husband. I was not, that's a
mm,
non-negotiable, right?
yeah,
I was not going to sacrifice having dinners with my kids. So I had a period, so between 6 and 10 p.m., I sometimes came back to work like 10:30, and
yeah,
like work another hour and a half and stuff on the book. Um,
yeah,
but the 6 to 10, sacred. Oh, but no, it's not about ordering out. It's because cooking and being together and asking about your day, 4 hours, you need to sit down. So that was a non negotiable. So when you are navigating that sacrifice, I find that you have to have the clarity to establish what are your non-negotiables and what are you willing to sacrifice? Because some things you are. So if you work out
Yeah.
4 times a week, you can work out 2. But if you don't work out
Yeah.
any, and if you gain 20 pounds, and if you don't go out with your wife and you ignore your friends, sure, you're going to have an awesome business, but you have nothing in 10 years. You're going to have
Yeah.
heart blood pressure. You're not working out. Your wife might have left you or whatever. So I think more than the sacrifice is the clarity of where is this not going to cost me? Because you will reach
But
success, Kelly, no
yeah.
matter the difference is you might be super successful in 5 or 10.
I see. I see. Yeah. I think at times I can struggle with the pace at which things happen, right? Because it's like for me, I'm very results driven. I want to
Yeah,
see success. I want to
yeah.
see the things moving forward. Like anybody who knows me knows that I'm very goal driven
Mhm.
and I accomplish most of my goals. I don't miss many of them. But the problem is that I can get so set on that accomplishment that I can really block out a lot of other things. And it's funny because I thought this was just me for a while. And then I talked to a lot of entrepreneurs and they're like, yeah, like that's me too.
Yeah,
I have to check out. Like I have to do things. I have to go hide my phone or lock it away. I have to do all of these things in order to try to be more present in the moment because I think most entrepreneurs, we don't live in the moment.
yeah,
We live in tomorrow.
yeah. I'll tell one thing I always talk about in therapy is your biggest quality is always your biggest quality is also your biggest shortcoming. So to be hyper focused, to be results driven, and listen, whatever I establish as a goal, I usually get to it. That is a great quality to have. You get things done, you're accomplished, you go and you get it. The other side of that is it's dangerous because you
Mm,
will accomplish it no matter what. And that is what the danger is. Because
mm.
you are so driven, you are so focused on that result that you
Yeah.
along the way don't see what you're doing.
Yeah, it's funny because I just hate losing. I've talked about it on this show so many times. I hate losing. I just do. And I don't know why. It's just a part of who I am. I hate losing. I was born, I think I played a lot of sports growing up. I loved winning in sports.
Yeah,
I loved winning in everything
yeah,
that I put my mind
yeah,
to. And it's really translated into business, which, like you said, has been very
yeah.
beneficial in business, but it can be negative too because sometimes I don't know when to quit.
And I'll just say like 2 more cents on that. I hate losing. The thing with business is that the loss is immediate. So sales this month were less than sales last month, or the sales this month were less than sales last month. So I'm going to work harder. And then sure enough, next month the sales are better. So the
Yeah.
thermometer is very quick.
Yeah.
So your wins and the losses are immediate. The problem with losing your health, losing your mental health, losing your wife, and losing your children is that it's not overnight. Like you cannot adjust it over months. When you
Yeah.
realize you might have won 3 years in a row, business wise, but in 3 years, you've been slowly losing these relationships. You have been slowly losing these intangibles that are so worthy, but they are not measurable. And then when
Mm.
you notice, you can't go back the 3 years
Yeah.
and you cannot revert overnight.
It's not an overnight
It's not
fix.
so it's like, okay, oh my God, my wife is perfect example. My wife said she's leaving me. Like, I don't know what
Mhm.
happened. Or like my son will not speak to me. And you're sitting there, okay, where did this start? I don't know, just overnight. I'm like, let's go back to the year they were born, right? So it's like relationships are built
Yeah.
and they're earned. You're not entitled to good relationships. They're built or they're earned. So if you don't work at them, if you don't make them your non-negotiable, then you will lose them over time, no matter how successful you are in business. And you
Mm.
won't see it coming.
Yeah.
So I think,
Yeah.
you being such a youngin at 35, these are wisdom words from an old lady that, it's something you build over time. So I think, again, going back to the establishing the non-negotiables so that you can continue to achieve. Again, I don't want you to get rid of that great quality you have, which is a go-getter. You put the goals in, for sure you're going to achieve them. Keep that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
not to the point where it becomes mania and you lose stuff that is very important to you.
I think one of the challenges that I have, Patricia, is that I believe deeply in momentum. And I believe that you have momentum when you have it, and you
Mm,
have to take advantage
mhm,
of it when you have it.
mhm.
And I think I have a bit of a fear that if I take a step back, I'm going to lose that momentum and I'll regret doing it.
Yeah. But why are you stepping back?
Well, I don't know. Like, I guess to me, it feels like, okay, if I look at my schedule for my time, like I'm getting up at 5 a.m. just to get things
Yeah.
done that I want to get done that I can't get done if I don't get up at 5 a.m. I'm not, what's funny is I'm not a morning person. I became a morning
To
person
get
as an
things done.
entrepreneur to get more time because I couldn't rob time anymore from the evenings and weekends. So I had to rob it from my sleep in the
Yeah. I'm gonna get you
But it's funny.
get you to read
I've
that
become
book,
a
Why We Sleep. It's like,
yeah, it's so funny. I've become a morning person more so out of necessity than desire. But now I actually love it. I love morning
yeah,
time. I never did, but I became a morning person, but it wasn't really a choice that I would have made without needing that time, which is super funny.
that is really funny. That is, it's, you do what you need to do for sure. And it is about, it's just not binary, as in, I'm going to full throttle this or I'm going to
Yeah.
step on the sideline. It's just, it's not a this or that. It's not, I'm a momentum person or I let it go. It's not about letting
Yeah.
it go. It is about, though, doing enough, keeping in check that you are a machine and you have limited
Mm,
resources. Uh,
yeah.
the body is a machine. And if you don't respect it, it won't respect you back. Right. And the
Mm,
same with your
yeah.
relationships. If you don't respect them, they won't respect you back. So it is also about it's all the things you want to build parallel to each other. So
Yeah.
momentum in that as well.
One of the things that you said that really resonated with me is you'll be successful either way. It just might take another year. And I think like I've struggled with thinking that because I think, well, that's a year that I could have been more successful.
Yeah,
Right? As stupid as that
I
is,
know.
that's what goes on in my head. It's not that like it's like, yeah, but I could be there or I could be here,
Yeah,
right? Like it just
yeah,
and I think that is just like and I have so many friends who would say the same
yeah.
thing. Like if I was to really pin them
Achievers.
down and have that conversation, they would be like,
I hear
yeah,
you.
but if you slow down, you're slowing down. And why when you could, but you're right. It's like the whole goal, like, and this is the part that I struggle with is the whole goal of success for me is freedom. And yet I'm less free today
There.
than I have ever been in my entire life.
Boom. I have nothing to say to that. But can we say it again so we can highlight it?
Oh, we'll
Boom.
highlight
Boom.
it.
Like yeah, I don't think I can ever say anything that comes after that. Perfect.
Yeah, it is weird. It's a weird paradigm, but I think in my world, and to a lot of people that I've chatted with who are successful and now have freedom, they had to work very hard to get there. And now they have it and it's amazing. And it's like I think there's a part of me being young and striving and wanting to get there. It's like I want to do that by 40. I want to earn my freedom then so that I can have more of that time. But yeah, it does feel like a shitty trade.
Yeah.
It does feel like I'm losing today. And the shitty part about that is tomorrow is not a guarantee.
And 40, you're gonna want more because it's a drug, right? Achieving is a drug. So every time you achieve something, you want something more. So it's almost like you need to get cured from that obsession. Because
Mm,
I'll tell you something. I remember like financial independence was probably my number one core value. I like it is nuts to say, and I have reformed since, but I guess like my brother says, yeah, you've reformed because you've achieved it. So yeah, I guess. But
yeah.
being right, and then how much do I need? And then to me, it's like, okay, you need to have this much, and then you reach it, and then it's like, okay, then I need to have this much, and then
Yeah.
you reach it. Today, like I kid you not, I have many times as much as I first determined I wanted to have. It's sitting there, like comfortable, right? And the other day I was doing my taxes and I'm like, okay, how much money do I have and all this? And I'm like, why do I still run for it? Why do I still want to do
Mm,
more and more and achieve more and more? Because it is a drug. So it's okay to have that. I don't think it's a bad thing to have ambition, to run for things, but I think it needs to be from a place of how can I contribute more? How is my
yeah.
business going to solve more people's problems?
Yeah.
Right? How is because money will come no matter what, right? And how can you serve your community and do all this coaching and help people become more successful in their businesses and have this great podcast that people are listening and hopefully will make their day better. How can you do this, i.e., service to your community, still make some money on the side, but not give up your non-negotiables? I would love
Mm-hmm,
for your marriage to be forever. I would
Yes,
love for
yes.
you, if you have kids or if you're going to have them, for you to have a great relationship with them.
Yeah, yeah. I have 3 stepsons and I have a almost 6-month-old biological son. And I look at him now and I just think like I want to spend as much time as humanly
Yeah.
possible with those
Yeah.
boys, you know? And it does feel like okay, what that means if I want to spend more time with them, I need to really work hard to make it today so that I can have that time with them later. But yeah, it's like I think we're all struggling with where do we make that
Yeah.
sacrifice? And I know I struggle with it immensely. And, my relationships have suffered, my friendships have suffered. A lot of things, my health
Yeah.
has suffered. A lot of things have suffered
Funny how I
on
pointed
this
them
path
all
to,
out. I'm like, did
yes.
I point them all out for you? And dear listener, we did not talk about this before.
No, we did not. No, but I would argue almost anybody I know who is ambitious has suffered from all the same things. And my God, is it just the price we all pay? Why is it that we're on this hamster wheel?
I propose to you, Kelly, not to be binary yes or no. So it's not either I succeed and I follow this momentum and I get going, or I let go of this dream and then I'm not going to be successful and I just forget and I'm going to be mediocre. What I'm proposing is this and success and a
Mm-hmm.
good relationship, success
Mm,
and great relationships with your children,
yeah.
success and great health, and working out, and being in
Yes.
shape, and not gaining
Yeah.
a bunch of weight, and eating healthy, because it is not binary. And I think
Yeah.
this is what our generation now is realizing, is that you actually can have it all. You can have health and success. It's just you need to have success realizing that that has both sides. The really great part, which is the drive, but also needs to be kept in check. So you take your calendar. If this was a therapy session, I'd be like, let's open that calendar. And I would make sure that we put in there like the blocks of time with wife and children. I would put in
Yeah.
there the blocks of workout times. And those would be in a color that are non-negotiable. Oh, but I have a really important meeting. Well, then you change the time that you're working out. What are you going to get out of that? You can move it around, but it has to be on that day or that week. So you track,
Yeah.
I'm going to work out 4 times a week. Well, I don't care if you have to do it Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but it needs to be done.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
because then you can have it all. You can have
Yeah.
it all. That's what my whole I want to convert everybody to believe it. You can. It's not binary. It's not either you're successful or you're like a deadbeat under the bridge. It's like, no, you can have it all.
I was gonna say, Patricia, this is starting to feel a little bit like a therapy session.
Well, there you go. I'll get you booked for next one.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no. And I want to spend a little bit of time on that because I think that your kind of career jump, you were a successful and still are, not just were, still are a successful entrepreneur who decided to then pursue a path in therapy. How? Like that seems like a very interesting jump. You were already incredibly successful and yet you went the therapy route.
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
Because remember where I was telling you about, you're successful in something and then all of a sudden you want meaning.
Yeah.
I have an import-export business. I still run it. It's 20, how old is it now? 23 years old.
I got 23 years on my paper here.
23.
Yeah.
It's 23 years
Yeah.
old.
Yeah.
I sell food to private labels in the US. Love the business, super profitable, does it well. So the whole idea was, how can I contribute more? And this is what I was telling you about your coaching, about your podcast.
Yeah.
How do you contribute to this big world? How do you help
Yeah.
people live better lives? And of course, the pivot was I started going to therapy. I saw the effect that the therapist had in my life. And I was like, man, I want to have this impact in somebody else's life because that
Yeah.
is meaning. That is a life where you die. You're like, I've helped people. I wasn't just
Sure.
self-serving all life long. So
Yeah.
that's what I did. Went back to school. So I got a master's in psychology, started working, started seeing clients. I have a psychoanalytical training in Brazil as well. And I love it. This is truly my passion work. Love talking
Yeah.
to people. It's not
Yeah.
as lonely as it was,
Yeah.
as an entrepreneur. It is lonely. right? It's like there's these families that depend on you, people you employ. My success is not just mine. So I can't fail. I feel like I can't fail because it's like all this responsibility. Whereas here in therapy, I facilitate. So it's
Yeah.
almost like you get to go on a journey of self improvement, of self discovery, of, how do we change or reframe these thoughts? And I love this work. It's such
Yeah.
a passion. I love it.
Yeah.
I wonder if it comes out in my voice, but it truly is something I love doing.
Well, and I think that you are so unique. You are so unique. You're keyed as the therapist for entrepreneurs. And I think that that is really, really important because it takes an entrepreneur to know an entrepreneur. And you're not afraid to call out an entrepreneur on their shit because you are one and have made those same rationalizations in your own
Yeah.
head. So you can literally say, you're kidding
Yeah.
yourself, quit it.
Yeah.
Whereas I think there's a lot of therapists that wouldn't be willing to do that. And frankly, there's not a lot of people willing to challenge an entrepreneur or a leader unless they are a leader themselves.
Yeah. There's a little bit of that. Um, I think for therapy, the one predictor for successful therapy is the relationship between the client and the therapist. That's the number one
Yes.
predictor. It's not the approach you use, it's not where you were educated, it's not nothing. It's the relationship. And I find that for sure the population of entrepreneurs resonates well with me. There's something about the way I speak. There's this assertiveness and this voice, and that's the way I present things, that jives, that resonates, that they feel heard or seen. And for sure, I do. A lot of it is I see you because I see me in you.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's a lot
Yeah.
of the work I've done as well. A lot of the personality traits that I carry. So that even the ability to see them as great qualities, but also where the shortcomings come in. So for sure, that has something to do with it. But that doesn't mean that's exclusive to me. There's for sure other therapists that will do great work, even though they're not entrepreneurs, and they can also hold that space and make the client feel seen and heard and all that. But for sure, you have to know where you succeed. Clients that have the need for more supportive therapy that need you to kind of be there. There's some questions and issues that I tend not to work well with. And those I usually refer out because
Sure.
again, I still have that like you, I like to win.
Yes.
So I like to see clients that I know I'm going to be successful
That's
with, that I'm
right.
going to have a good,
Yes.
right? Like that things will move forward. So I do this little interview first, 20, 30 minutes. And I'm like, okay, what can I help you with? And then if I see it's going to be a great match and we're going to move forward and it's going to happen, then sure, I'll start the work. Otherwise, I'm like, you know what, this I'm not very good with. And here's
Sure.
great people that I work with and they do great work with you and you'll be way better served by this therapist. And then I just refer them out.
Yeah, no, it is amazing though, and I think it is a specialty. I don't think I've ever seen somebody who specializes in entrepreneurship before, and so I think this is really cool. I'm really thankful we're having this conversation, and I'm pretty confident that somebody listening is going to be like, I need to reach out to Patricia because we're struggling with these same problems. When I started the business development podcast, one of my main goal was always to educate and inspire with every
Mhm.
episode. It's what we want to do. My other goal was to be as open and vulnerable as possible to show the real side of entrepreneurship, not the bullshit side that the world sees and all these people on this giant pedestal, but the fact that we're all people and we still suffer together, right? Like we
The
still
struggle
experience
is
all
real.
the same problems. It's very, very real. And I've been as open and transparent as possible. Frankly, more open and transparent than I've even been probably in my personal life and for a lot of my life. So, I think having conversations like this where we can be open and vulnerable and not sugarcoat it, talk about the truth of the reality and become more human and show that, everybody is capable of entrepreneurship. Everybody has it in them if they want to take that jump because so many people have great ideas, are inspired, could change the world, but they're just afraid to take that step. And one of the questions that I wanted to ask you was, what was it that made you take your initial entrepreneurial jump? Were you just born that way, or
No,
was there a catalyst that kind of spearheaded that for you?
no. In respect for the truth, I don't agree with you that everybody can be an entrepreneur.
No,
No,
hey?
I no. It's not that I don't believe. I mean, that came out harsh, but I think an entrepreneur has a set of skills that it's not that people are not capable of it. Some people just don't want it. And I think that
Sure.
is to be respected.
Yeah.
My own path, like I would have never chosen to be an entrepreneur. I'll tell you that for sure. So when I finished I finished an MBA and then I finished a master's in management in France. All I wanted was to be an executive. All I want, like get a big company, get a great multinational job, go up the ranks, make it to C-level and happy as like that was the plan I had for myself. Never,
Yeah.
ever, ever. But then I went to Brazil. I went back when I finished. I went back to Brazil. Was dating my husband already. We were engaged at that time, and I'm like, okay, fine. I'm going to go to Brazil. I have great education. It's going to happen. I got no job offers for the amount of money I wanted to make. I got some job
Mm,
offers, and I wasn't. And let me explain that I was not looking for a bunch of money. It was just something reasonable, right? Somebody with an
yeah.
MBA. I'm like, I should be paid at least like enough to pay my bills. And
Yeah.
nothing. I did not get any offers. The only offer I got was like to work in an old industry that I wasn't interested in. It still didn't pay very well. So I'm like, well, this is not for me. Now, my husband, he is the one to blame for all of this. He, like, for sure, like, pestered me and pestered me. And, like, you got to open your own business. You got to do your own thing. You got to open your own business. I'm like, oh, for Christ's sakes. Like, no. I'm like, you come from an entrepreneurial family. His dad's an entrepreneur. Everybody there, they have their own businesses. They run their own thing.
Okay.
And he's like, you got to do it. You got to do it. Then it's all yours. And I'm like, for Christ's sakes, no, 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 no. And sure enough, so then I opened my business, and my business was
Yeah.
consulting for companies that wanted to export. So that's how it all started. I'm like,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
speak English. I can talk to the FDA. I can get your products approved. I can get everything kind of adjusted to make sure you get into the US. And sure enough, and then I'm like, whatever sales, I want a percentage, I want a commission on the sales, but it was my own business. So did that for a year. I was working, still fixed was very little. The idea was that I was going to make money on the sales. For a year, I made very little money. I'm like, I'm quitting this. This is no good. Like
Yeah.
somebody with an MBA should be making more money. He's like, relax, relax. It's going to work out, right? The wisdom. I'm like, oh, for Christ's sake. So again, so it's 100% his fault because
Yeah.
he was so adamant and he was such a believer. For a year and a half, Kelly, I made no money. Like I made like
Yeah.
$1,000 a month. It was hideous. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
can have an allowance for my parents that is bigger than this stupid salary. It was so
Yeah.
dumb. Like it was so, I worked, like I've never worked so hard for such little
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
But sure enough, I'm very grateful to him because it was 100% him. I would have for sure quit and found a job. It turns around. And when it does, then it's like, cha-ching, it's all good. The money keeps coming
Yeah.
in. It's a recurring sale. Now it's all good. But it took a while for things to take off.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess like, did you embrace it eventually?
Yes. Yes, I
Yeah.
did. Yes, I did. Now I could not imagine a better life. So now I would
Yeah.
never go back. But sure, now it's like 30 years later. Not 30, but like 23 years later. But I'd say the first 5 years, I oscillated a lot. I
Yeah.
oscillated a lot because the first 5 years, that's when you're building your business. That's when you're working tons to not make a lot of money. Right.
Yeah.
And also, if you think about this, I had 2 babies in those 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm nursing and kind of checking emails as I'm like it's
Oh,
kind of
boy.
nuts.
Yeah.
Like my mat leave was
Yeah.
10 days. For 10 days, I didn't check the computer. And then, right. Because I'm
Wow.
working from home, but 10 days I didn't check the computer. And
Oh
then
my
you're still
gosh.
doing this. It's hard. And I'm like, why am I doing this? I'm not even making, like, why am I doing this? Because I'm not making, for sure, it's not for the money. Right. So 5
Yeah.
years into it, then things turn around and it's like, okay, oh, hang on. Oh, this is good. But it took a
Yeah.
while. So 5 years,
Yeah.
it was rough. I could not brag about my work for 5 years. And then
Oh my
afterwards, it's like,
goodness.
okay, all right then. So now,
Yeah.
hindsight, I'm like, everybody should be an entrepreneur. But
Yeah.
first 5 years, I'm like, this is dumb.
It is painful. It has its moments. I remember talking to my boss, before I became an entrepreneur, and I worked with him for 10 years. And he goes, Kelly, you know you're an entrepreneur when you wake up at 2 a.m. and you're terrified about the future. And I remember waking up at 2 a.m, being terrified about the future and be like, okay, I made it.
I am an entrepreneur for sure, for sure, for sure. And I'll tell you this, and I was from like, I was in an extremely privileged position because in the first 5 years that I'm working lots and making very little, my husband's like, money is not a problem. Like he's supporting the house. He's like, don't worry about it. So I didn't have like the money thing was more me because I'm like, I wanted to be
Yeah.
financially independent. Like I
Of
wanted to
course.
make
Yeah.
lots of money. It was a Patricia thing, but ultimately our housing, all the bills were paid. And even still, it was a struggle. So if you add to that the financial responsibility that 99% of entrepreneurs have, that I didn't because I was privileged, man, oh man, I don't know how we all make it. Like, I do not
It's
know how am I. Oh man, we should have like this Entrepreneurs Anonymous.
oh
Like,
boy.
I'm Patricia and I'm an entrepreneur. Let's talk about PTSD. It's crazy.
It is crazy. It is crazy. It's this like crazy roller
It's
coaster.
crazy.
That's like the best thing that I can even compare it to, is that you're gonna have amazing highs and terrifying lows.
Yeah.
And hopefully every once in a while you find yourself on the way
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. And even today, right? Like, again, 23-year-old business. It's very established. It's very solid, very good set of clients, reoccurring sales every year. I'm like, okay, what's going to happen this year? Like, am I going to be able
Sure.
to supply him? Are the maritime companies going to be good? Are we going to have a Suez Canal problem? Panama Canal now,
man.
like, so Panama is all
Yeah.
backed up. Is there going to be
Okay.
COVID? Are the ports? I sell to Baltimore. That bridge was no good for me. Like, the bridge that collapsed.
Okay.
Right. So
Okay.
that I use that bridge for all of my shippings. I'm like, oh, Baltimore is my biggest port where I sell to. So
Yeah.
that collapse, I'm like, all of a sudden that whole week, I'm like, where are we diverting all these containers? I have a bunch of
Wow.
containers in the sea. I'm like, where are we diverting them? It's nuts, right? So every day there's never a dull day in an entrepreneur's life.
No, but honestly, like, I couldn't imagine going back now,
Yeah.
being the other
Same
side of
here.
it. It's like, once you've gone this route on your own and proven that you can do it, the personal empowerment of entrepreneurship is worth it on its own.
You can make it happen. You can make things happen. You drink the Kool-Aid, you never go back. The empowerment, and I find too, the empowerment for good. Because if I can sell food, and if I can get through the FDA, if I can do this, man, why am I not using these talents to enhance and better humanity? Right? Like, it got me to this. I got to do something. If I was able to get this done, hey, where can I contribute now to make other people thrive as well? And right. So that it to me, it did a flip on the empowerment of, there are some talents that maybe I can put to use to service, right? To contribute. So that was my that was my pivotal moment.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I'm a huge advocate for entrepreneurship. We're always trying to inspire a few to take a jump on the show, and I think we might have just done that.
Yay.
I want to chat with you, Patricia, about some of the services that you offer, because obviously, we've talked about therapy, but you offer some other services as well. Can we go through the full gamut of the services that you provide?
Yes. So I do the it's almost a pyramid. I was talking about to my marketing guy. I'm like, we should have this like on a pyramid. So the entry level is the book. So yeah, the book is about connections, about bettering your relationships in your personal life and professional life. So the book is the entry. I do have the sessions, the one-on-one. It's therapy, it's psychotherapy. It's one-on-one sessions. We can do it every week, do it every 2 weeks. People do it whichever way they want. I do, though, for companies, I speak and I do workshops. And mostly that's focused on company culture, how to create a connected culture so that companies can create these strong teams that then can succeed. And the strong teams are made when people can connect across differences, when people can connect across generations and across values and cultures. So that is what that big work is. And that is something I'm really focusing on these days, because again, like I told you, it's not about what the leaders think. It's about, how are you going to succeed as a leader in a changing workforce? Because people now are quitting, right? So now do I cater for the leaders? Not really, because I am catering for their business. Who's my client? The business. Because if I cater for the boss, then I'm going to try to convert the workforce to what the boss believes. No, my client is the business. For the business to succeed, I need these two, the leader and the workforce, to communicate and connect. And that's what the workshops are about, and some of these keynotes.
Well, now you have me really curious. When you're working with these organizations, what are some of the common issues that you're finding?
We talked about one of them here, which is where, again, think of who the C-suites are. They're people my age. So you have these like late 40s, early 50s. They're on your C-suites. They are directors. They're managing partners. And the workforce that comes under them, they're young and they don't stay in their jobs. The turnaround is really hard, is really high. The disengagement is huge. They're just not connected. They're like, whatever, man, I'll come to work, but I'm quitting at 2. And the owner's like, you can't quit at 2 if this needs to be done. I need you to be engaged. I need you to be, to really believe in this and get this done. I need you to be totally on board on this. And they're not. And a lot of the times the problem is the leaders and the C-suites don't understand how we motivate the workforce. So the work that I do with leaders in workshops, so workshops is smaller, is about how can you connect across these differences and across these generations. So that's one of the things that I do. And the other thing that I do is talk to the workforce. So I get brought in to speak to the workforce and get the workforce to understand that, yes, we need to be connected to a purpose. Yes, we need to be connected to values. And I'm only going to work for this boss if I respect them, if their values are aligned with mine, correct? But I need you to be accountable, right? Because a lot of times they're just not accountable. It's like, oh, I want a mental health day. You know what? That's great. You take your mental health day, but the stuff you need to hand in needs to be handed in. So it's pushing both sides so that we can be in a workplace where we're all accountable, things get done, we're still pushing forward, we're still moving forward, but it's a human workforce where, yes, sometimes you will need a mental health day. And if I'm not in my computer today from 12 to 2, you're not going to get on my case because all my stuff got done. Maybe I worked from 12 to 2 midnight, right? So
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
there's a little bit of that autonomy, it's give and push, because right now we're polarized because the bosses, again, they're like digging their heels and it has to be this way. And the workforce is going, no, it has to be this way. We want all these rights, but we're also not delivering. It is about really getting people together because things are changing.
Yeah, like I actually agree with you completely. If you get the work done, I don't care. I don't care. I want it done as long as I get the results. How you got there, it's like you don't have to show me the math.
Yeah.
Just get me the right answer, right?
Absolutely.
But like you said, the other side is what do you do when they're not showing you the math and you're still not getting the result? I think that's the struggle where we're all finding ourselves as leaders right now, where it's like, okay, we feel like we've given the leeway, but we're still not getting the result and we're not really sure how to motivate them to want to achieve more.
And
And I think that's hard
and
when they're not.
that is a huge question. And in these talks to the workforce, it has to do with take your position away for a bit and let's get on the shoes of whoever's running this business. How would you run it? Right. And then get them to walk a mile in these shoes so that it's not about them, because a lot of it is that entitlement. It's about me. I need this, I need that. And you're like, okay, but how does the business move forward if it's all about you?
Yeah.
Right. So the work has to be done on both ends. Absolutely. The workforce needs to be educated if they want to be successful, because I think too, they come in at 25 and their 20s and early 30s. And a lot of it is not even realizing that you actually do need to work hard. You might get the
Yeah.
mental health days and we will value all this. And you can work a 4-day week. Absolutely. If you produce really well, if you deliver
Yeah.
really well. And if you're willing to, you know what, I'm going to take Friday off, but I'm going to start my Monday on Sunday evening just to get stuff together so that Monday, like I'm on and I'm 100% on and everything's done. So they need that education too, which when somebody from the outside comes in and tells them that, it's much better received than if the boss
Oh
says it.
yeah.
So that's,
I believe
yeah,
that. I
it's like
believe
the
that.
therapist.
Yeah.
Like I'm telling stuff. It's like my wife told me this. I'm like, listen to your wife then, right?
Yeah. I totally believe you. This sounds super, super important. I know there's people listening. They're like, we need this. How do they get a hold of you, Patricia?
LinkedIn right now is the best way. I do have a website. It's patriciabathory.com, but it's under construction. So it
Okay.
is under construction. I'm getting things organized with the speaking, putting a speaking reel in, just putting all the context nice. But patriciabathory.com, you can try it. Maybe it'll be up, maybe it won't. Otherwise, LinkedIn. Patricia Bathory can text me there, message me there, drop me a note. We can get talking. It'll be a pleasure. Hopefully I can help businesses move forward, especially Canadian Albertan businesses. It'll be great.
Yeah.
It'll be a pleasure.
Oh, okay. Let's get a little more specific though. You could offer your services either across Canada or probably across North America, correct?
I can offer my services anywhere because it is online. Now with I was in Istanbul last week giving a talk to Istanbul. So you can move around and can do whatever, get in the plane and you get that done. So anywhere. Therapy services, if it's psychotherapy and if you need to claim it on your insurance, then that's across Canada. But I do have clients in the States and other places that it's consulting work from a psychotherapist. Okay. So interpret that as we will.
Either way, if you pay for it, it's available.
Yeah. I'm not allowed to say I do psychotherapy and clients from the US. It's like, all right, so I do consulting work.
Amazing. Well, this has been really great. We could have talked for like another 2 hours.
For sure. This was a great conversation.
There's so much to talk about.
Yes.
I look forward to having you back again in the future, Patricia. Until next time, this has been episode 174 of the Business Development Podcast, and we will catch you on the flip side.
This has been the Business Development Podcast with Kelly Kennedy. Kelly has 15 years in sales and business development experience within the Alberta oil and gas industry and founded his own business development firm in 2020. His passion and his specialization is in customer relationship generation and business development. The show is brought to you by Capital Business Development, your business development specialists. For more, we invite you to the website at www.capitalbd.ca. See you next time on the Business Development Podcast.